Let's say hi before we
Hi.
get started.
Yeah, we have our like intro questions, right? Like our what's giving you life these days, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we usually do. What's giving you life? Yeah. So this is the first time you guys have ever joined us, and I think some of you have probably heard. And we usually do a little intro to think about what's giving us life. Most of the conversations we have are both fun, but also sometimes tough. And it's always good to kind of think about, why we do them, and also what's making us happy. So if anybody wants to like start, or do we want to do the thing where we call on people?
Well, someone maybe can start and then pick the next person. If that helps us move things along sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. My arm got twisted. Here we go. So what's giving me life, I'm really looking forward to going to the basketball game, the Chabot basketball game tonight. I have for the last 3 years been trying to go to a Chabot basketball game and haven't been able to. And so I finally told my son. So that was how I committed. I was like, I'm going to, because he was talking about a basketball game. I'm not going to pay hundreds of dollars to go to a professional basketball game, but I'll go support our basketball team. So I told him that I would take him. And so now I'm fully committed, and I'm excited to be able to support our team, expose my son to amazing students, and just have a good time and be in community. So that's what's giving me life. And I've literally been hanging on to that all week. Like, I just need to get to the end of the week so I can go cherish this time with my son and in community at Chabot.
Thank you, Abby. I'll go ahead and follow. I think giving me life right now is going to pick up my son at University of Oregon. So I know he'll be home for a few weeks, and so that's exciting. And my mom's already planning, like, oh, what does Marcos want to eat? So it's just like, oh, we get a treat. When Marcos is home, we all get to eat well with my mom cooks. So that's always exciting. Kristin?
What's giving me life right now is I'm on a queso quest, like trying to make the perfect queso. And we're trying with Velveeta, we're trying without Velveeta, we're trying with like this new salt that's supposed to like work it out. And so just getting to eat lots of nacho cheese and watch some Warrior games and just really enjoying like laughing with my students. We're doing puns this week because we're talking about satire. So we're just putting jokes in the chat and they're cracking me up. And it's been really sweet to end the semester with them in that way, with lots of giggles. See, Carmen?
Well, I think the thing that's given me life today and this week is my Change It Now learning community, and particularly the faculty that I get to work with, Michael Lai, Jason Ames, and Pedro Reynoso. And we just had our end of the year celebration with our students, and it was just super sweet. We did, we played some games, we did like a Kahoot with faculty trivia, and the students got an opportunity to share like what they've learned about themselves through the pandemic. And we really thought about the event as being just a way to help students transition from being, online and in person, and kind of just to acknowledge, everything that we've been through as teachers and learners. So it was really sweet just to like see them reflect. And it was interesting to see how many of them talked about like meditation and journaling and just how important self-care had been to them during this pandemic. So it was just really sweet to get to be with people. And I just feel so just grateful that I get to do that work and get to work with such amazing faculty. What about you, Monique?
I think for this week, I always get into like a panic around like this time because a lot of grades are due and you have to have a lot of like great conversations and hard conversations. And so I've been talking to students like constantly, and they've all been so wonderful, like just to have like a connection, right? But then also, like sharing bits about each other's lives and knowing where they're at and how they're feeling, and finding ways to kind of like make it, whether that means pass the class or not, but just make it, and just hearing how they feel about the class, because I'm all by myself doing it in this like little weird world, right? So like getting that feedback, it's just been really, really nice to be in really close contact with them all week. I get pieces of that throughout the week with like people coming to office hours and stuff, but it's been kind of constant and draining in a way that I remember and enjoy, right? It's something that I've actually missed, that kind of like draining from talking to so many different lives, right? Like looking at so many different lives. So that's been really cool. And also I think it's giving me a reason to like really care about the end of the semester, because it was feeling a little dull for a minute.
It was feeling hard too.
Yeah, just like really, just really hard, especially when you're disconnected. It's super hard, right? Like when there's like a disconnect, it's really, really hard. So yeah, that's been nice.
Cool.
So this is Sandra Genera, and thank you, Abby Patton, for joining us today on the Brown Bag podcast as we talk about how the Chabot Las Positas Community College District instituted an equal employment opportunity plan. Conversation started in 2019, right before the pandemic hit, and there was a hiring freeze during that first semester of the pandemic. Chabot in particular had not hired any faculty or staff, and now there's money coming down the pipeline. We just finished our faculty prioritization, and so the list of faculty that were recommended for hiring for Chabot and the district came out. And now we're going to be able to institute and the equity, employee equity statement with the application process. But how was your experience in working with the district and then with the subcommittee in putting together or reviewing and putting together the EEO plan for the district?
Sure. No, first of all, thank you for the invite. It's one of my favorite things to do is to talk about diversity in hiring, specifically because I see the population that Chabot has and that a lot of California community colleges have, and we're very very heavy in supporting students of color, but we don't have a lot of faculty and staff that are representative of the student population. And although we want to make sure that all our faculty are culturally responsive and culturally competent, and they work well with our students. It's also really important for students to see people that look like them around campus and to have role models. And so I am really excited to be here today. Thank you for this opportunity. So this Equal Employment Opportunity Plan is actually something fairly new. This 2016 was the first time that they were requiring from the Chancellor's Office an EEO plan. And then 2019 was our second iteration of it. And so every 3 years we have to renew. In fact, we're actually working now to renew the plan for this upcoming year, 2022. And when I came in, some of the conversations had already started. So I came in the tail end of the conversation of creating an EEO plan. So basically what the Chancellor's Office said is, you have to create an EEO plan, and then colleges will receive a very minimal amount, $50,000, or districts, I should say, $50,000 to support the work in the EEO plan. And the plan itself has a very concrete model that was shared by the Chancellor's Office. And then there's ways for us to be innovative within that plan. But as you know, there's a lot of restrictions with hiring, specifically in light of Proposition 209. And so a lot of the recommendations are around recruitment and making sure that we are visible and sending our job announcements to areas of highly populated folks of color, having pipeline work, like doing, whether it be informational sessions for candidates of color, and we can't even call it like for informational session for Black faculty, right? It has to be like an informational session. And we could talk about how it's important to have, and actually the law, Title V, requires us to acknowledge that we do have a gap in representation of staff and faculty of color. But we can't use race or ethnicity or any protected class as for consideration, and we can't give special treatment to people of color in the hiring process. So it's a really tricky situation. So when I came in, as I mentioned, the conversations had already started. So a lot of it was there were two components in particular where we had some leeway to change some of the language, and it was around considerations for the district to adopt. So it wasn't required, it was considerations. And you're absolutely right, Sandra, the pandemic kind of threw us out for a loop, and we had really good momentum. We got together and we created an equity statement, and the equity statement was actually born out of Chabot. I want to give credit to Dr. Gallucci, who spearheaded a lot of that effort and put together a committee and was able to then vet the equity plan to various places, including SASE, and we had a flex day, and we had we shared it with different folks to get a lot of feedback on it. But once that happened, the pandemic pretty much followed, and so the equity plan is included in our job descriptions. We have hired some folks, including myself, right? I was like recently promoted to from a director position to a dean position. So I saw that in my hiring process. When I applied, I saw the equity statement. It was actually a really surreal experience, thinking like, oh man, like this is what we've been working for. Now I can see it in it live. But there's so much growth. There's so many more opportunities for us to be able to impact and to make sure that we're intentional about how we are recruiting and how we're going through each of the process of the hiring. So, when you look at the equity statement, that's just one piece, and it's mainly to tell people, it's mainly to tell folks of color, like, we want you to apply to Chabot, we want you to be here, like there's a space for you here. And that was the reason for me why it was such a big deal to have an equity plan. The district since then is working with LPC to create their own equity plan, and it's a spin-off version of what we have created. So they've also are in the process, or have, I think LPC has adopted theirs. I think the district is mainly still tinkering ours and pretty near the stages of also implementing theirs. But it is a little bit of a like a victory in that sense, and then an opportunity to reflect and think, wow, in the last, since this was adopted in 2019, that's all we've done. And so what else can we do to move these conversations forward? And we've been talking about, like, when you look at the job announcement, there's a question there, and the question is a diversity question. And so that diversity question has actually been there. But we want the question to not be included as part of the application, but to be included as a subset, just like we have the cover letter, the resume, your minimum your qualification statement. We also want an equity statement to be included from each of the candidates. So some folks have gone through the application process and not realized they've had to answer an equity question because it's embedded, right? And I've been in several committees for this last few months, and folks don't even realize that you can actually go into the application. Like most hiring committees just pull the resume or pull a cover letter or pull the qualifications. So I think, we've been putting together a rubric to be able to assess the diversity question. And once we have that within the committee, I think that'll be another step. But again, there's so many like ideas and thoughts about how we can improve our processes.
Yeah, I feel like the equity statement is interesting because, like you said, it is embedded in the application. And if you don't know to look at it and to think deeply about it, then it can totally get skipped over. And I found, because that when you're on a hiring committee, the process is so daunting. There's so many applications to get through that is usually like the first thing I go to look at because it matters to me, right? But if it's not on your priority or if it's something that just feels like a throwaway, then it can easily, be skipped. And then people also don't really know how to talk about that statement as far as like how you should, I don't know how you should offer points around it. So it'd be great to like have a rubric for people and to get some guidance on how to think about that statement.
I agree, Carmen. Like that statement, when I've been on hiring committees and we look at that, and it's very, from person to person, it's very different how people actually score or think about that statement, even what they think it means to answer that statement. So it's several times, like we in the committee have had to evaluate, like, wait, maybe we should be looking at this statement in this way. What does it really mean to serve that question and to answer that question? And it would be wonderful if we could, like, as a college, be on the same page with that. A rubric would be super helpful.
Yeah, I was just going to add on that, you have the equity statement, but you also many times don't see conversations happening about it, right, within the committee. So it's almost like what we had proposed as a committee was to make sure that this equity statement is part of the minimum qualifications. So developing this rubric that can tally up points for this particular piece of the application, and then if that person didn't have a minimum amount of points, then technically they wouldn't meet the equity statement qualification, and therefore they couldn't even be moved forward as consideration for a first level interview. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish, but it's baby steps.
I love the idea of moving it out of that box that it's in, because it's just such a restrictive little box, right? When it shows up on the application and it doesn't tell you that it matters to our college, even if when it's just framed as a little box, right? But having it be in a cover letter would let so much more voice come through for people and really just give us a chance to have those discussions about the rubric and how people might comment on it. I think that's such a great suggestion, Abby.
And I know, Kristin, many of us have been on hiring committees, and most recently, I know that you were on a hiring committee. And one of the comments that I heard you say when we were in general talking about, just the hiring process, like being able to hire somebody, first of all, and then just being able to say like, wow, that diversity statement did make a difference in the hiring pool, that you noticed it made a difference. Can you share or expand on how you noticed, or what kinds of things did you notice in the hiring pool with this new diversity statement?
Yeah, I think just it's interesting to hear that 2016 is kind of when diversity in hiring came up for us at Chabot, because I've been on several committees before that, and then multiple since then, right? And I think it's been interesting just to watch the pool shift. Even within English, I think we made some changes as we started to put our lens and focus around equity. We made some changes to be much more intentional about who we could recruit and what our minimum quals were, including high school as part of the background for good teaching, really opened up some of our applicants. And so I've seen kind of incremental changes in terms of the process and the committees forming. Sometimes I remember being on one with you a couple years ago, Sandra, not too long ago, but just before the pandemic. And because we had been in a workshop around the equity statement, I think that the hiring manager of that committee did a great job of like bringing us together to rewrite the position, to really think about the needs that position was going out for. So then it had a little bit more flavor to it, maybe is a way to say it, like a little more tailoring to the position than it might have if we hadn't gotten together before it even got posted. And then it was posted widely, and we had incredible applicants to choose from, both in the paper screening and and all women of color on that particular committee. to choose from who had such different offerings. And it was really, really exciting and to have that deliberation. In the more recent one, I think what I found interesting was that the hiring manager, having paid attention to equity throughout like the composition of the committee and through our like formation of a committee. It was a pretty big group. So making sure that everyone's voice was heard about what they were looking for within the position before we even started the paper screening, I think helped us to be more intentional and get on the same page about equity. Like the diversity statement I think within the application made it so we had an incredible pool for this particular group. Over 50 people that were excellent. And so narrowing it down became really challenging because I think their equity, even within the little box I was talking about that I thought was so kind of like, it's so restrictive, people really expanded and blew up that box, right? So you learned a lot through that diversity statement. And I think that, I guess there's the kind of the rubric would be helpful because I don't know that we all had we talked a little bit about how we might score and what we might need, but we probably would have been more intentional even about those conversations if we had a rubric to think about in terms of scoring the diversity statement. At the same time, all of the interview questions had an equity thread through them. And we were very intentional about doing that in this round, which I thought was incredible, to be able to just really hear people thinking about equity and budget, right? Thinking about equity just in general. And so it was cool to be able to be on a committee with folks and kind of come to a sense of what we all meant by equity within that particular hiring committee. We got excellent candidates that we were able to send forward to the second level. We had top-notch candidates to the point where I wish we could have hired every single one that went to the first level. It was a really powerful process. And I think that statement made a huge difference in our applicant pool. People care about Chabot that applied. I don't think I'd seen that before. Maybe that's the best way to put it. The people who applied know our students, they know our community, and they care about our community. And something I think about sharing our values helped to elevate their willingness to disclose or be passionate about trying to apply it to Chabot.
Yeah, I was wondering about, because I know that this hasn't been like an easy project to get through, that there's been obstacles and barriers in lots of different ways. Some of it bureaucratic, some of it people's just, assumptions. And so I was curious just about that, Abby and Kristin, just what it's like, what has the experience been? I know that anytime we bring up equity, particularly around this issue, people think it's some type of dumbing down, or you're not going to get as qualified candidates, that, you're just hiring any old person of color. And I wonder how you engage in that argument and that type of resistance to this movement. Like, what would you say to somebody who is like, well,
I think just the irony is just how much better the pool has been since we've made a couple of tweaks. Like in English, even the adjunct hires are just even stronger and stronger. So, I mean, I guess part of it would be, let's see what happens when we make these tweaks.
Yeah, I think for me, it's, we tend to hire and we tend to have friends and we tend to align with people that look like us and people that share similar values or share similar experiences. And so it's really hard to hear a comment like, oh, it's just dumbing down, because that's who I associate with, or that's who I align with. And so I think it's about better training on unconscious bias, for example. And you talked about like some of the challenges, and so we created suggested interview questions, right, to share with any committee, so that there is a toolbox for people to say, okay, here are the questions. How do I include these in the interview process? But it's also a crux, or it's also an excuse for some committees to only have one equity question, right? Because that's really all that's required, or that's at least how it's framed in the suggested interview questions, is put at least one. And I'd like to get us to the point where Kristin is talking about, to say every question should be an equity question, because that's who our students are, right? And then and it shouldn't just be like, I'm going to throw in an equity question for the sake of, to be able to check the box that we did this. And so those are some of the barriers, I think, is getting folks to get past this idea that equity is the job of somebody else but them, right? That it's the job of like our equity directors, that it's the job of, whoever is considered the equity focused folks on campus. And it's actually all of our job. And so I think that's why it's so imperative for it to be included in every question. And the conversations around, like, including equity in budgets, including equity in resource allocation, including equity in what type of classes we're offering. I mean, these are all real conversations that I can stem from the hiring committees. But I think those conversations need to happen outside, so folks feel comfortable when they come into hiring committees actually having those conversations, right? And we should be okay at using race-conscious language when we have flex days, when we have town hall meetings, when we have college-wide presentations, so that then folks feel like they can actually speak to it. And a lot of it is providing people with the language. Like, a lot of folks just don't know how to talk about equity, and it's not that they have ill intentions, and it's not, it's that they just need the tools and they need the language to be able to articulate what they want to share out in these larger spaces. So I do think we participated in a training just last week, the EEO committee, and one of the highlights for me was that it's an attorney who's like training us on how to look at our EEO plan, and what are some of, she's actually advising the chancellor's office in creating a whole new model for an EEO plan. And then she shared that, diversity is not about a candidate, diversity is about the institution. Right. And so in order for that to happen, like, we need to be comfortable as an institution to move in that direction.
Yeah, that's great. How do you think that we get comfortable? How do you think that we get people, in the room, able to have these conversations and not feel nervous and scared or worried? How do we set people up so they can be on a hiring committee and have this, in-depth conversation about the equity statement, or be able to think about who our students are and what the needs are and what the gaps are in the different departments? How do we create a culture to do that?
I attribute some of that already to the work that you and Kristin are doing.
Oh, really? Us? Oh, the work we do?
Was that like the bone for me to?
It's like, yes.
Right. No, I mean, that is, you're doing the capacity building work, right? You're getting people in spaces, into rooms, in conversations that are, and I think you preface every meeting by saying, this is going to be uncomfortable. Like, I kind of feel like that's how you start every conversation. And that's exactly what we need, I think, right? So part of that is like building that capacity in the small groups. And, I think you have tried different things, like working with particular disciplines, with particular divisions, working with categories like administrators, thinking about how to support faculty that are coming in as new faculty at Chabot, and capturing that population. And so I think that capturing pockets of the institution is really powerful, right? Because eventually I think folks would be able to be more fluid around conversations around equity. I also think that, I think in most spaces that I've been outside of Chabot, people always tell me like, but Chabot is so progressive, and Chabot is so equity minded. And then I'm sitting here thinking like, man, we got so much work to do. Like, and so it's actually, so it makes me reflect when people tell me that, right? That Chabot is so progressive. And I appreciate that. And at the same time, I think about all the areas that are not thinking about, you know, our disproportionately impacted students, all the the barriers that we create with like our onboarding processes, and with, you know, that some of the just institutional barriers that we have, that, you know, we can talk about equity all we want, but if we're not like bringing down these barriers, like we're not going to make a real substantive change with our students. And so I think another, to your point, Carmen, I think it's about being able to be fine with knowing that we're not going to do things as we usually do, because we're not serving our students in that manner.
Yeah, that's so true.
So before we end this conversation, I just want to check with the ladies, because you guys did great. And we did really well on time. So are there any follow-up questions you guys feel like you want to ask? We can maybe have like 5 minutes for that, if you're okay with that.
I just want to say that I think this conversation is important in light of us, you know, getting ready for spring hiring committees for, you know, to get new faculty, staff and administrators in and for the fall 2022 semester. And so I think, you know, one of the EEO plans, you know, says to recruit and advertise and market to all of these diverse groups, and so then it's like, who are they? Who's providing that list of groups? You know, is it HR? Like, and if it's HR, like, can we see that list, or is it being shared? Who is that list being shared with? Because we in our own disciplines may have groups that may be able to have listservs that we would be able to advertise to as well. And how can we get those listservs included in the HR traditional marketing or distribution lists of our positions that are advertised?
Sandra, that's been in my to-do list for like the last 3 years, has been like codify all of the different spaces that have where we can target candidates of color in particular. So I think I'm going to put it on my immediate action list so that I can send out a campus-wide email. I mean, I think it's that easy, right? You know, yes. There are some limitations, like, you know, there's like, I know I've been asked before, like, oh, where do you want this to be sent? And then it's like, for everything that I click, I have to pay X amount of money for every, but it doesn't have to be like that in every, I think like if you use those big data sources like LinkedIn or Indeed, like those do charge, right? But I think when we're thinking about like the Puente listserv, like, or the HSI Leadership Network listserv, or the Emoji listserv, like I think those are spaces where we could capture the exact population that we want, and at the same time don't have to pay any extra money for it. So I'm going to definitely follow up on that, Sandra. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to speak to something else you had said early on, Abby, about like the mentoring and like creating more of a pipeline. And I think that would just be so great. There's so many students that we have, you know, that we're like, oh my God, I know one student for sure, Tafa, who is a Pacific Islander student and was an English student, and she really wants to come back and teach English at Chabot. And we're not really set up, you know, to help students who want to teach at Chabot, let alone even work at Chabot, right? And so how do we create more of a pipeline for our students? And I think it is going to require us to look at some of our patterns of assimilation and stuff around class and who we think should be in these jobs. I think that's part of the obstacle, but you know, being able to have some type of pipeline or program so that our students that want to come back here and teach or just even work here in a more full-time sustained way can do that. Because I think that's what really, you know, that's the community in community college. And even offering, I mean, when I came in to Chabot, some English teachers had put together this whole workshop about how to apply for a job in English. And I got this huge packet of with the cover letter and questions and, resume, like how to apply, just totally demystifying the process. So I think that would just be awesome, just to have how to apply for a community college job, just to help people know what that process is like. Because I think for a lot of faculty of color, people applying, they don't have the connections to help them be the most prepared for those interviews.
Right. And one of the things that I've been able to offer as a counselor is be a supervisor for students who are in counseling programs. And so I've been one of the only counselors that have had interns, counseling interns. And I'm at like 90% of the counselors that have been interns with Puente have been hired full-time. Right. I have one who's been hired part-time as a counselor, but now got hired as a coordinator, director of the Dream Center, right? And is in a doctoral program, right? And so, but that's the only way. And so the counseling department is just now trying to open up. It's a lot. It's a lot of paperwork to get through the district to say this is a volunteer. And so, but it's growing our own. It's evolving counselors of color, people of color, and that connect with our students.
I know we're past time, but Sandra is a counseling making machine, the counselor making machine over there.
Can I do a quick one? Do I have a second to add a little? I just think this is kind of tying in this comments that both Abby and Carmen have made around just really getting better at our comfort with the language around assimilation, and especially class assimilation, I think would be important. I know it really opened my eyes when someone said, we tend to hire who is like us. And I was like, oh, so I got to be, I know that's unconscious bias, right? And I should be able to have known that. But I didn't really think about, I wasn't always looking for who to hire that would be complementing the area and adding some skills that we are missing within our department or within the organization, right? And so I think that's really been a huge shift for me to really look at candidates in that way. What do they bring that we're missing or that I could never offer? And how can we really amplify that and make sure that we're seeing strengths across intersectionality? And I think class is a key place that we could pay attention to much more in addition to race, right? In addition to language, in addition to culture, in addition to many other factors. But I'd like to see us get more comfortable talking about that around Chabot.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a beautiful conversation. The way we like to end these things is to make sure that we give people something to walk away with that helps us or that we're loving on. And so we give a little recommendation. Carmen's known for giving the best binge watching recommendations and great books, right? But you got to think about what do you want for people? What's something that you recommend they do or enjoy? And and then as soon as you're ready, you can give the recommendation.
Well, I can go first, and I will stay in my lane with my pop culture TV recommendations. But what I really recommend for people is opportunities to laugh. I was up the other night, I watch a lot of crime. That's my favorite genre. But then I was watching The Last OG, which is a show with Tracy Morgan on TBS. And it is hilarious. To me, it's very, very funny. It's very Black and it's very, very funny. So I think, watching that show, yes, but also just getting a chance to laugh, just taking some time out to make, we do such serious work and important work. And sometimes we just need a place to be silly and goofy and just laugh our asses off. So that's my recommendation for people, to get your laugh on.
My recommendation is to get your music on. I've been listening to DJs on Twitch. And so I oftentimes share it with my family. I share it with my friends, and then we're all like making dedications in the chat and the Twitch chat. And so it's been real fun to connect. I feel with my community and with my friends, with my family in a different, modality. And so, but also enjoying music. Music has always been a part of me and my relationship with my husband. So get your music on.
I really miss making the little shout outs. Like, I feel like it's been so long since like you dedicated like a little oldies song to someone. I miss that. I'm gonna get on Twitch.
Those were the days.
I'll send it to you next time I'm
Those
on.
dedications, calling in the radio. I dedicate this song.
Yeah. Making sure you're ready to tape record it. Well, I guess I'll do my recommendation. I think my recommendation is like get together with your homies. Like, if it means that you're 6 feet away and wearing masks because you still have concerns, but still do it. Like get together with your homies, laugh, have fun, talk smack. Like just like blow off some time with people that you love. I think it's really we've gotten really busy and also really lonely. And so I've done that a lot this week and it's feeling really good.
All right. My recommendation is get your cuddle on. So I usually have putting my son to bed duty because I get home and it's like, okay, jump in the shower, hurry up now. And it's a hurry up process instead of let me enjoy this time with you because we're coming down from the day. And so just last night he was like, Mommy, can you just cuddle with me for a few minutes? And I just laid there and cuddled. And in my head, I was thinking, and then I have to do this, and then I have to do that and make sure to do that. And then I was like, stop, like just cuddle and be present for him. And it was actually really cool. So then when it was time for me to go to bed, I told my husband, can I just cuddle with you? And we did that for a couple minutes. And it was just so like nothing had to be said, but it felt like we were so much more connected after that cuddle time. So get your cuddle on.
That is so true.
Get your nature on, I think will be mine. And like I've just been trying to be out among big trees or among the ocean, like checking out the moon. And you don't even have to go outside to do it. There's a great new little podcast, or it's not new, but there's a YouTube channel called Outdoor Chef that I've been sharing with people because it's just, this guy Taku is out there, like he catches his own fish and then he creates these sushi platters or paella platters outdoors, and he'll be camping in Alaska, or he'll be like out in Half Moon Bay on a little kayak and pulling up the squid, the calamari, and then he'll go cook it up. And it's just beautiful, like how slow paced it is, and you can see the water, and he's just so like easy about being on camera all the time. And it's really, really just lovely to see someone slow down like that and be outside and be in the big universe.
How beautiful. Thank you all so much for spending time with us in our Brown Bag podcast. And so this episode of the Brown Bag podcast will air in February. And so it'll be right before or right as hiring committees are coming together. And so it'll be a conversation that they can go ahead and take to their hiring committees, hopefully, to be able to say, hey, what about this diversity statement? Where is it now? Where's a rubric? Let's develop a rubric, or whatever the conversation may be. But hopefully it'll spark the conversation in the hiring committee. So
and hopefully it'll get people to think about their questions like you guys were talking about.
Yes, most definitely.
And we're going to be offering some PD sessions for folks to come together and think about this topic.
Yay.
I have a wonderful weekend. If I don't see, I'll see Kristin and Carmen next week, I think. But if I don't see you, happy holidays.
Yes.
Happy holidays.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Enjoy your time with your family.
Thank you too.
USA.